Hello, I am Lenworth Levers, member of LAND. If you're interested in more information, check out our site at jalands.org. That is jalands.org. Or on Twitter at lands_ja. That is at LENDS_JA. Now on to the news. We'll be talking about femicide in Jamaica, the scourge of homelessness, potential COVID-19 woes, corruption, nurses being slighted by the government, and Haiti potentially holding a referendum in June. Lawyers say Domestic Violence Act allows women to arm themselves. The Gleaner. The issue of femicide in Jamaica has rightfully been a topic of much discussion for a very long time. This is an article where a couple of lawyers are making the argument that there are good provisions with the Domestic Violence Act that give women legal avenues to protect themselves from said domestic violence. However, the truth is that many of these systems that are meant to, quote, defend women simply don't go far enough. Even if women are willing to leave their partners, they may not have the wherewithal to do so. Women having the legal means to defend themselves is a good thing. However, this is dealing with a symptom rather than the disease. The reason why women are put into these very deadly situations are due to the fact that we are socialized to believe that women are essentially to be owned by their partners, and any sort of resistance to that idea may be met with literal abuse. This is, of course, a very dangerous and oppressive way to view a human being, and those ideas need to be destroyed at their root. We need to teach men and boys that women are not property, that we are all human beings deserving of dignity and are to be respected as such. On to the next topic. There has been yet another attack on homeless persons in the corporate area. Again, we're leaving the people on the fringes to be treated the worst in our society. We need programs that offer people homes first, then allow them to recuperate from whatever may ail them. Many studies have been done on the matter, and just generally, this is one of the first things that needs to be materially addressed: house the houseless. It is likely that there is a homelessness crisis in the country, considering that since COVID lockdowns, prices have only gone up and the currency has been sliding even faster than previous years. Jamaicans are hurting, and we need a means to get out of this dire situation. Chief Medical Officer Jacqueline Bizazor Mackenzie delivered an ominous warning Thursday evening as the country braces for a third wave of coronavirus spread, disclosing that the peak week could bring 180 deaths, according to the Gleaner. She has hailed the lockdown measures as being an effective armor against the deadly COVID-19, which has killed 770 Jamaicans so far. However, she then went on to say that usually what happens is that we see that whatever we are doing is working, the numbers start trending down, and we start to feel that we need to open up and allow more movement. And as soon as we do that, we see the reproductive rate go up, and shortly after, our numbers start to go up again. You get the picture. The trends are good, we're dealing with containing the virus very well, and while there are certain methods that can be adjusted, such as considering things like time density of certain procedures, time density being that small window of time where people can do anything, and this then causes massive crowds and potentially more spreading of the virus. We ultimately shouldn't entirely turn away from having mitigation strategies, as we have yet to vaccinate enough Jamaicans to reach herd immunity. Also, luckily, nearly 40,000 Jamaicans will be eligible for the second round of vaccinations, as we got a new batch of 55,200 vaccine doses this week. The remainder will be pooled with the 11,800 vaccine doses previously in stock and will be allocated prior to groups, again, according to the Gleaner. On another COVID-related story, the government is planning to restrict travel from Trinidad and Tobago as a result of the P1 or Brazilian variant being found there. This is a strange restriction considering that last week we opened up travel from the UK. Now, of course, yes, the UK variant is already here, but the truth of the matter is that the virus can go wherever humans are, and therefore the Brazilian variant can come from any other country that we don't have banned. This is a very strange political choice that only isolates a regional power. Now, of course, travel bans are good, but just select countries isn't the best way to go. The only other country that is on that list is India, and there's still another nation that isn't banned that has more confirmed positive cases, that being the United States. Anyways, back to school. Students poised to sit a range of exit and external examinations are set to return to school for face-to-face engagement, Prime Minister Andrew Holness has announced. On an anecdotal note, for how it's being dealt with at least one high school, persons over 60 were told to stay at home, while teachers had the option to go back to face-to-face classes or keep doing their teaching from home. But of course, the teachers of students that had CSEC and CAPE this year were primarily expected to be going back to work, as the only way to really avoid needing to do something like this would have been to be having accessible internet infrastructure in the first place. Aside of that, we look at what we have here, risking increasing the amount of people that die to this virus for the sake of education. It's a massive decision that honestly no one should have the choice to choose between. In some good news related to COVID, the COVAX program has seen 34 million more doses being provided to the facility, according to Radio Jamaica. This will mean good news for many global south nations that have been doing their best to curtail the virus throughout this period, despite the very apparent vaccine imperialism/apartheid. Former Commissioner of Police, Rear Admiral Harley Lewin, has asserted that Jamaica's onerous bureaucratic system is facilitating corruption, resulting in a major issue for the country. He goes on to say that corruption is more than just money passing hands, though he honestly doesn't describe what other things he deems to be corruption. Now it's an undoubtable fact that Jamaica has a massive corruption problem, and our politicians love to lie. But to say that only Jamaicans have this onerous system as a problem is misleading, as it takes us out of our full global context. The problem with Jamaica isn't just that our politicians are corrupt, but also that they primarily listen to their masters at the US and the UK, rather than the Jamaican people. This, quote, onerous system doesn't only exist for Jamaica, but much of the global south as well. Various nations are at varying levels of struggle against this system, but we as Jamaicans have yet to fully achieve sovereignty from the reigns of US and British imperialism. Now to the next story. 6 months after he assumed leadership of the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, Director General Leslie Harrow has quit the agency in an apparent displeasure over interference by an overbearing local government ministry. Allegedly, ODPEM has not been able to carry out its functions to its fullest extent due to the government overreaching their control of ODPEM. On top of that, the government is supposedly using ODPEM as an opportunity to siphon tax money by forcing the organization to pay more than $10 million over 1 year period for meetings alone. If this story is true, it only sheds light on something we Jamaicans already know. Government funds aren't actually being used in the way that they're stated. They lie and steal and constantly from the Jamaican people without any shame or sense of humanity. But then, the next day this news drops. Leslie Harrow denied that he had resigned from the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, as reported by both Jamaica Observer and the Gleaner, saying that he was shocked when he saw the front page stories. Quote, "I wish to make it unequivocally clear to you, the staff at ODPEM, the local and international partners of the agency, and indeed the Jamaican people, that nothing in these stories are true." End quote. He said in a letter sent to both newspapers. He also said that he went to the agency in November on a 6-month secondment, and that he is simply now returning to his previous position in the Electoral Office of Jamaica. The Observer is holding on to his previous claims, stating that a, quote, highly placed government source has confirmed their story, and that other government sources had also confirmed their claims that Harrow had an uncomfortable relationship with, quote, individuals in the political directorate. The Gleaner claims that their sources, which were ODPEM staff members, were shocked to hear of Harrow's letter of denial. They went on to mention that ODPEM's expenditure had come under further scrutiny after it spent about $1.3 million 8 days apart to host consecutive meetings of its board. Quote, "At a time when everybody's holding meetings of the highest levels on Zoom, ODPEM board members have held face-to-face by assembling members at 2 Kingston hotels," end quote, an insider who requested anonymity told the Gleaner. They went on to say that such consecutive meetings were anomalies, as board meetings are usually held once a month. Regardless of if this man felt like he was being slighted, at the end of the day, the main problems are still there. The corrupt government officials are walking away with our money and using it to live a high life. Next story. Nurses say government 2.5% wage offer is insulting, according to Nationwide Radio. Generally, the story covers how the government has mistreated Jamaica's nurses and had frozen their allowances since 2015. Nurses are a critical part of Jamaica's healthcare sector and deserve a lot of respect for the oftentimes thankless job they do. A measly 2.5 increase is certainly a slap in the face, especially considering that the Jamaican dollar has been sliding faster than it ever has, primarily due to poor economic decisions and choices of political alliances from our government. Finally, but still very importantly, some news on Haiti. The Observer reports that Haiti has signaled its intention to hold a controversial referendum ahead of presidential and general elections despite growing international criticism. Quote, "A referendum is an act of sovereignty. It essentially concerns Haitians. They are the ones who decide whether or not they want a referendum to change the constitution," end quote, Prime Minister Claude Joseph told at a news conference. The article goes on to talk about the U.S.'s opinions and mentions talking points from the U.S. State Department as though their opinion matters. What we want to know is whether the Haitian people care about this puppet dictator to be their leader or not. Luckily, we need to look no further than the constant protests that the Haitians have been taking part in for years. Power was illegally usurped back in 2004 in a US, France, and Canada-backed coup, and the people have been resisting for just as long. This current dictator, Jovenel Moïse, who has been terrorizing Haitians since 2016, got his position in an election where 10% of the votes were thrown out due to, quote, irregularities, and out of the 10 million population of Haiti at the time, only 600,000 people, that's literally 6% of the people, voted for the stooge. His term should have ended back in February 7th this year, but he long held to the claim that it actually ends next year, which the Biden administration had actually initially backed. But due to the relentless protesting, they have to find another way to legitimize this fake president. Ultimately, these foreign powers, like the US, need to get out of the politics of the Caribbean. We need to be allowed to do what we want and as we see fit, rather than all of this undemocratic nonsense being forced upon us. Okay, so that's it. Thank you for listening. This has been Leonard Levers, member of Lands, with your weekly update.